All right, so as the Zoom lady said, recording in progress. This is, I guess, a return to the Mark and Anthony show. We tried this originally,
By the
damn
way,
near 3 years ago.
that's a crap name. We coming up with a better name at some point.
You can come up with a better name anytime you want. I mean, I'm not gonna say
What's
I'm
wrong with the
indifferent to
Urban
it.
Discipline Hour or however long we're gonna be talking?
There's nothing wrong with urban discipline. Just
Always like that moniker.
yeah, I don't dislike it either. I don't dislike it either.
You made it up.
Um, I made up a lot of things over the course of this half century.
Nah, that's what's up. All
All
right.
right, so yeah, you look good. What I'm gonna have to do is bring a reference monitor because, like, right now, I want to see you, but I have to see you. I have to look away from the camera, so I'm gonna have to change, just like physically change, like the orientation in my room. Like, put the camera above, like next to, or some above, with a monitor, so I can look at the camera, see you, like, you know what I mean, like you're seeing me on a webcam or whatever. 'Cause you're looking right at your screen.
Do you have a flip screen on the camera to see you?
I do not have a flip screen on the camera to see me.
So
I
you need the external monitor.
Yeah, well, I don't want to see me. I want to see the person I'm talking to.
No, I feel you. I just didn't know if you wanted to check stuff because I can
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you whatever I
Well,
see the screen is. But
I have a monitor. I have I don't know how much of that you
oh,
can see.
yeah, I got you.
But my cables are, that's the end of the cable. So that's the switcher, right? So if I had multiple cameras or multiple sources, so when everything's hooked up, that's the other thing I got to get all squared away. But once everything's actually kind of hooked up, this the same way you can sort of produce audio with your system, I can do some video production. I can do some graphics in lower thirds and some other things, but I just got to kind of get it all squared away. But that's part of the services I'm going to be offering. Like, so the idea with Atlanta event video, I want to do live streaming, video podcasting, and some event coverage, but like, I'm gonna try to find a good niche for the event coverage. I don't want to just cover all events, so I don't know exactly what the niche is going to be
I'm
yet.
working
It
on
might,
that myself actually. I just met with some people, so I'm definitely looking to get more active on the event side. Just in general, like I'm pretty excited about it actually. From the
yeah,
charity event that I just went to the big music festival they had, and then I got a couple of meetings set up with some people that got some stuff going on. I'm like, all right, let's get this thing going, which I'm perfectly okay with. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. That's, I mean, that's my number one priority. As everything kind of can, when I say everything, I mean like the whole political situation, economic situation, physical security situation. As everything gets further away from stable, um, I want to have I want to have income independent from, so like, I'm in a situation now where I'm working like multiple contracts, and part, like this adjunct teaching type, all of this part, which is basically just a part-time job with no benefits, like it's some decent hourly, but no benefit. And then like this, so this term, like, I've been running um 2 classes, which just kind of hit the level where I could like cover everything, save a little bit, and also like pay off, like work off some debts, like that. So they cut me this term, not because of anything I did. I had a perfect review, but just because of student load, and trying to keep all the instructors employed, which I mean, I'm not upset that I didn't want anybody hours to get cut, but I didn't want my hours to get cut.
Nah, I feel you.
Um, but anyway, and then the church that I'm working for changed the payment structure, which sort of ended up with not the ideal situation. I mean, they were overpaying us before, which I get. I mean, I knew that from the beginning. Um, and I kept waiting for the shoe to drop, but I thought the shoe was going to drop in the form of more hours that they were going to require, which I was kind of reserving time to compensate for. Um, but it ended up being they didn't add to the hours. They just reduced the pay by like 20%. So now I'm in a situation, and on top of that, just because of some other things that are going on, um, so like we're actually working an additional hour, 45 minutes to an hour. So it's like working more, making less. Not, it's just kind of the way it worked out. It's still a good contract, like it's still good pay. It's just they were, I hate to say it, but for 6 months they were overpaying, and that was nice.
Yeah, I bet it
That was nice.
was.
Yeah.
I have yet to have anybody make that mistake for me, but such is the grind. Such is the grind, which is probably why we're here, so that people might find half of what we say interesting enough to add to our hustle.
Well, and I mean, that's exactly sort of the situation everybody's in: hustle culture, grind culture. Um, Bob Marley, the prophet, the great Jamaican American prophet, Bob Marley. He has this one line, or he has many lines, right? But just kind of talking about the concept of Babylon, what the Rastas talk about when they mean Babylon. This is part of Babylon. Like I hate that I have to be the but this whole grind set mentality, the fact that it's necessary, it's one thing if that's just how you are because that's just how you are. But it's like that's how the world is making it so that there is no time to enjoy. Not I'm being hyperbolic, but there's less and less time to enjoy sort of like just the sanctity of your own peace of mind and just like your existence on this earth as
Enjoy,
like
period.
the justification. It's like you have to work to justify yourself, like your economic output as a justification for your time on earth. It's like just the fact that being born is like not sufficient justification for your time on earth.
Yeah, it.
Oh, sorry. So the line is something like they made the world so hard. Every day people are dying, and it's like that line about they made the world so hard. And, like the world's hard anyway. Like there are difficulties anyway in the world, but to a certain degree, it's like it doesn't always have to be as difficult as it is.
This is true. I mean, hell, even during the time of Babylon, Hammurabi's code made a lot of sense in terms of instituting the notion of structure and all that other good stuff. So, you know, we're
Well,
stuck
that's
where we're stuck. You know, I had to get out of a place where I felt like it was a little too intense for me. So, you know where I'm at.
yeah. I mean, you know, I completely get
Zoom
a
in.
little bit. Yeah, trying to figure out this, trying to lock in this geometry so I don't have to change it every time. Yeah, man, like, and that's something like I definitely want to get into it at some point. Probably uh, over the course of multiple conversations because I understand a lot of the context surrounding it. But so for people who don't know, which is 99.99999% of all living humans who don't know us. Um, so Treble and I are cousins, right? We're biological cousins. Yeah, you can see the
Which no one
resemblance,
believes in
right? Yeah,
general
it's
and
obvious.
has
You can
it. No, looking right
see,
at us. Let's see, 6'4", however much weight more than me, 5'9", fair skin, dark, blah blah blah. Yeah, we're cousins, people. Although
yeah,
it is kind of it's funny that we're only 2 years apart, but we're in two different generations. That's always been kind of wild to me because you're the literally like the baby of your generation. You're the youngest in your generation, right?
yeah. Not, I don't want to go all into our family shit, but yeah. There's a whole
Nah,
bunch of
but I mean,
stuff.
like you're in the
Uh,
same generation as my pops, which is wild because it's like, hold up, is that even possible? It's like, Yeah.
Well, that's just again, that's it's like political lines on landmass. Like when the way we divide generations is sort of there's biological generation by iteration, meaning just how many children down are like from you know what I'm saying? Like you can count fathers to children to children's children, children's children. Like that's one thing. But then we automatically sort of also assign from familial categories based on and that's why it's weird sometimes when you have someone who's older than their aunt or older than their uncle or
Oh yeah.
and there's no perfectly you know reasonable how
Yeah.
stuff like that happens.
I was sitting there thinking, I
uh,
was like, is he gonna say normal?
yeah, well
Or
yeah, it's like
no, I got
it's
you.
not crazy or unheard of.
No.
um but anyway, so long story
Reflection of
short,
a
yeah.
good fertile family.
Yeah, exactly. So ladies, if you need a hookup, you better get it while it's hot because we ain't getting no younger. Nah, so but for the context, yeah, so we're biological cousins, and right around the time that the fan hit the shit, in what was early 2020, he'll give you the more exact details on it.
That's about right.
He decided that he could not deal with some of the situations he was seeing and experiencing in the United States. So he left. You can do that, people, believe it or not, if you have your paperwork in order. So
Yeah,
yeah,
still wondering what's going down with yours there, buddy.
yeah. I mean, that's just so many things to get straightened out. But yeah, that's definitely happening because I got a number of things that require the international access. But okay, so in your own language, I guess, and again, you don't feel the need to go into every detail because I think we're going to have to expand on this over the course of time. But just sort of in a nutshell, explain to people where you are and where you've been for the last little while, and how you wound up there as a New York born North Carolinian a homeowner. How you ended up outside the United States and what's the how so yeah tell the folks what the deal is.
All right, so I live in Merida, Mexico, which is in the state of Yucatan. There's 32 states in Mexico. This one's right next to the same state that houses Cancun and places that people are typically familiar with when it comes to tourism and resorts and all that stuff. But Merida is a city that's very close to the Mayan ruins of Chichen Itza, one of the seven wonders of the world. Culturally, it's exceptionally rich. It's one of the safest cities on the planet. It's just very, very much family and community oriented. Um, I fell into my own little paradise. A lot of it was driven by research that I had done in combination with the direction that the pandemic kind of forced me into. Because I had been looking at a number of places. This wasn't something that I was like, oh snap, the pandemic. Oh snap, they killing brothers. I gotta go. It was more like I had been thinking about going for a while, but I had made commitments and I was doing my best to get through, what I had to. And then just the escalation of all that, and it was like, yo, this is a real thing. This is something that I could really do. I wanted to do with my children at the time, and their mother try to see if we could go somewhere else, and that part of it didn't work out, and that's cool. I don't want to dwell on that, but through a bunch of research, and through limited access with respect to the pandemic, I kind of narrowed it down to this area of Mexico. I went to one city first, Chetumal, which I really liked, but because I work not just in education but in entertainment, I wanted to be somewhere where that was a little bit more a part of the culture. And Merida is a big arts and entertainment city. They have festivals all the time. They just had Merida Fest, which was incredible. I actually saw a band from Brooklyn, man. They they referenced them as an Afro beats band, but it was really more like Afro Latin jazz, like Afro Cuban jazz from back in the day. a little more modernized. It was dope. And then I went to a friggin' polo tournament, man. Like I ain't never seen polo before in my life. And it was an event for charity. Got to meet the organizers. So, now I'm actually out and about to do some things in the community. The song that I got out with old buddy from Australia, big shouts to Island Boy K, it's a killer record. And yeah, I'm actually scheduled, not officially, but I've already been asked to be on the radio down here in Merida. There's actually a radio program on an FM station that's broadcast in English every week. But the song that I have is in English and in Spanish. So I'm gonna kind of use that to help promote some of the other things I'm doing and get involved with more events down here. But for my mental health, for my physical health, after over 40 years in the States and my personal experiences, and then to see the things that were transpiring, I yeah, I couldn't take it, and I was already on medication, so it was like this. My kids don't need to see the person that may wind up being revealed because of all that's going on, and so I kind of stayed out of protests and stayed out of a lot of that stuff just for me. Um, everybody's got to walk their own path. So somehow I wound up in Merida, Mexico. I love it. Like I said, 30 minutes from the beach. Um, the cost of living is very reasonable. Um, although I wish more expats would understand, like more people that come to check it out, like they need to understand, kind of the local economy before they start jumping and spending money. Because a lot of people that come from the States, they actually openly say stuff like, yo, everything here is so cheap. And I say, yo, you can't say that out loud, man. You can't say that in front of people, man. That's kind of disrespectful, bro. Like, there's a lot of people out here working real hard for a very little bit of money. So to them, this stuff ain't cheap. A full-time teacher with an undergraduate degree in Merida, Mexico makes about $400 a month US. Real talk.
And that, that's part of the navigation that someone has to figure out, right? So, I mean, and there's different ways different folks do this. Like some folks have the resources, and it's not that much of a concern. Other folks have sort of an ideal situation in an online only position where they can earn U.S. dollars, and there's plenty of um, content out there for like the whole digital nomad
Oh
lifestyle,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
A lot of those people are here. They run their channels and they broadcast specific to Merida, and then they may be here for 6 months, 2, 3 years, then they go on to somewhere else.
Yeah, and even and that sort of term, that nomenclature even applies to folks who aren't necessarily even content creators, but just folks like, if you're doing a web developer position and you're fully remote, as long as you can get a stable internet connection and turn your code in, you could do that type of a job from anywhere. And there's other jobs that are like that. I think the pandemic might have opened some doors in that regard. Hopefully, they don't swing shut as we move out of the pandemic.
Nah, I think I've seen
Recognized pandemic
enough.
phase.
Well, I've seen enough online to suggest that there's still quite a market for virtual, remote, and online work. I'm always looking into it because, yeah, I'm one of those people that I have to make that level of income because I have bills in the States. If it was just me living here in Mexico, just me and the dog, little homie, um, I wouldn't have to make that much. I mean, I'd still have to make money and I still have to work online, but I got other obligations. But yeah, I just work a lot of different hustles online. Now, I'm fortunate enough in that I can work in Mexico because I'm a permanent resident. Like, I have a permanent resident card. I get free national health care. I can work. But obviously, the second I start making money from somebody in Mexico, I got to pay taxes here too. So right now I'm just paying US taxes and then I qualify to work here. But because of my status as a permanent resident, I can basically be considered like I'm retired until I decide to start working here.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's something you should pursue is the going through some content creation to navigate help people navigate that process. So basically, just for folks who are completely new to this whole sort of game, you're a U.S. citizen, and that U.S. Citizenship, that passport, entitles you to certain privileges. So I would never
Oh, it's
advise you.
powerful, bro.
Yeah,
it's
it
it's
is very
powerful.
powerful, and as you travel internationally, you come to realize, especially if you're traveling with nationals from other countries of origin who don't have American passports. Um, it's a very different situation for them. But where I was going with that is, I think it's worthwhile for people to understand. So there are possibilities for you to have privileges in other countries without giving up your privileges in the United States. But that's even an advanced step. Like at least if you're here in the continental U.S. or whatever, like your ability to stay in if you wanted to Canada, but that's cold. Why would you? Why would that be the direction?
It's not
Um,
just cold; it's expensive.
right. Well, yeah, it's a first world. Um, yeah, but your ability to stay as a tourist in Mexico is pretty good. Like even without going to the next level, with like
Oh yeah,
as
if you come in on a tourist visa, I mean they've cracked down a little bit because you had a lot of people just kind of flooding in. But I mean, there's more often than not, there's tons of people that qualify for the full 6 months, which is what you can come in on a tourist visa, being from the states. You can come and stay a full 6 months with no conflict. I mean, I know people who've been living down here on that because as long as they return to the states, and then they come back into the country, they good. So like I met a dude on a flight. He's like, yeah, I fly back every 6 months, stay for like 2 weeks, see my parents, and then I come back to Mexico because he was married to a woman in Mexico. He had a kid and everything. So I was like,
yeah.
interesting.
And as discover, as Trev discovered down there, this whole expat community, for better or worse, in wherever you go, that's a relatively safe area. You'll probably identify an expat community. But specifically where he is in the Yucatan and Merida, he's found a decent sized American expat community. But
Largest in Mexico, by the way. In the state of Yucatan, there are more expats here than any other place. I'm still bugging on how many people I meet randomly who don't speak a lick of Spanish and have been living here for years, plural. Like years with almost no conflict. So I'm like, yo, pretty dope, actually. And mad people from all over. It's not just, the United States. There's actually, I would say, probably more Canadians, although there's quite a bit. But then you got people from England, Italy, Hungary. Like, it's
yes, I
wild.
am a little hungry. But
But yeah, it's a lot of people here, and English becomes kind of a universal language in those communities. Now, a lot of those people do learn Spanish, but specifically the African American community that's here, which has grown like tremendously in the 2+ years I've been here, and I knew it was growing somewhat before that, but the spike since 2020 has been nuts. And yeah, there's a lot of folks down here. I've met some good people. Shoot, I've been here long enough to not only meet some good people, but actually lose one. My girl Kelly passed away like a couple months ago. I don't know. I ain't tell you about Kelly?
I don't think so.
Yo, I'm actually a little disappointed in myself because like not to get too like I don't want to get emotional or nothing like that, but real talk, she reminded me of your mom's. Like that was like Kelly was so real with it. I was like, yo, she just like Lolly. And then the wild part about that is she had lupus, just like what I'm saying, Ernie, your mom's twin, which was just kind of wild. I was like, I know that doesn't necessarily mean much anything, but we had always kind of communicated via Facebook through the groups, and she was always cool. And like right before she passed, she hit me up and was like, "Yo, come through. I know you wanted to see me, and they told you couldn't because my kids was in town, but I'm good now." And yeah, I got to see her. I was one of the last people to see her before she passed away that week. Like I saw her 2 days before she passed. Um, she gave me this mug because she used to do all this arts and craft work. I still got it. I call it my Kelly mug. I drink water out that thing every morning, man. So like I said, I've already had the good fortune of interacting with people down here, and that's only gonna grow. I know a number of locals that have been real good to me. Um, and obviously, I have the added benefit of being able to speak the language. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend, and don't let it's great that there are places you can go, like Merida, and a lot of places actually, um, where you can get by with just English. But that to folks out there, like don't be afraid to even if you're not a kid, you can still learn some new tricks, bro. Don't be afraid. Languages,
oh yeah, that's real talk, and I can promise you, the people here are very supportive of any and all of your efforts to pick up the language. They will help you through anything. Like they can recognize when you don't understand something, they'll try to help you. They appreciate the efforts. Like for real, I've experienced that firsthand. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, like some people just have that natural apprehension, and I think a lot of that comes from that kind of that U.S. conditioning, because people from outside of our country historically are not as averse to picking up other languages. Where we get that whole you got to take a foreign language in high school. Nobody really takes it seriously, and you basically just learn whatever version or dialect of English you learn depending on where you grew up, and then you don't really learn another language. Or you spent mad years in school studying the language, and all you can do is conjugate the verbs and can't speak a lick in real life because of the way
well,
the system is.
yeah, and because you don't actually use it here for the most part, it's like
Yeah.
I feel like using language is the way you really
No,
learn it.
immersion. Yeah,
Yeah.
immersion. That's huge.
Now, the U.S. being the way we are, and it's funny too because there are plenty of communities in the U.S. Where Spanish is the first language spoken. Like I've taught in more than one community. I've taught in communities here in Georgia and also back in New York, in the Bronx, where I would hear Spanish spoken in the streets. You know what I mean? It was obviously it's like a little Puerto Rican Spanglish, but still. Um,
Oh, no
and
question. Like, I mean, that's automatic. It goes both ways. Like, which is how it is. I mean, there's entire communities in the states where people only speak Spanish. Remember, my grandparents were in the States for mad years. My grandfather didn't learn like almost no English. He was there like 15 years because where they lived outside of DC, the community they were in, every place he needed to go to, they always had somebody that spoke Spanish because it was right around the way. Outside of DC, plenty of Ricans and Dominicans. Not quite like New York or Philly today, but always been a pretty good amount of Latinos in the DC area. So yeah, my grandfather. Only time I heard him speak even a little bit of English was when he took me to the bank one time, and the lady messed his money up, and I was like, "Oh snap!" He do know a little English because he was like, "No, no, you say 20, you say 20. These no
mhm.
20 count ahora otra vez, dale, dale." And I was like, "Yo,
He
abuelo."
let her know very quickly. He's like, I speak mathematics very well.
Yeah, he knew numbers with no problem. He was like, "Nah, this ain't. Yeah, I need my money, baby." But outside of that, yeah, like he didn't want to learn. He was just there for the family. My grandmother never left the house, so abuela, she didn't learn a lick of English. She knew less than him, and he knew like nothing, like 5%. But they kids, my moms, my aunts, um, most of them picked up English. Some of them really didn't, but that's just the way it goes. But I mean, shoot, I had to like take Spanish in school to even get serviceable at it because learning from a Puerto Rican family, like, yeah, it ain't always the best. Like, the Spanish I was learning was not exactly good. So I had a couple of embarrassing moments in school where I'm answering questions based on what I know, how my family talks, and all of a sudden I'm learning I'm not speaking Spanish correctly. Oops.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me. But
Well, like, nah, it was like dumb little stuff. Like I can remember one real specifically. I was like this is my freshman year. So it's first year in high school. I'm in like Spanish one or two or some crap like that. And everybody knows that, like I'm the new kid because I didn't go to middle school with all these kids. But they also heard me say I'm Puerto Rican. So it's mad people assuming I'm gonna know everything in the Spanish class. And I'm confident, I know a good bit. I listen to my family, blah, blah, blah. And like one of the first things, the teacher's going over different verbs and da da da. She was like, "Does anyone know how to say the verb to wait?" And they all looking at me. I was like, "Yeah, man, I know that." And she was like, "Okay, uh, go ahead, young man. How do you say to wait in Spanish?" And I said, "Espérate." And she was like, "Excuse me?" I was like, "Espérate." And she was like, like I'm not joking, Mook. She like she straight up looked at me. She was like, "Is your family from Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic by chance?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" Like I was getting offended. And she was like, "The verb is esperar. Espérate is a form of a command that you're just used to hearing." Because I was like, that's what my grandmother and everybody would say when they wanted your ass to wait somewhere. It was espérate. But Puerto Ricans eat S's, as do Dominicans and some Venezuelans. Don't ask me why. So our accent is actually a lot of Colombians been doing it lately too in songs, even African Americans. I don't know when that became a thing, but everybody eats the letter S because even Ti does that on his songs. Lagao, like all of them say that instead of let's go. It's like, really, is it that difficult to throw the S at the end? But Puerto Ricans eat the S, so instead of saying espérate, like wait there, you wait, which is the translation, you wait. I always heard espérate. Mira, espérate ahí, coño, no se mueve. So that's what I said in class, and it was more embarrassing getting clowned by the teacher than the students. I was like, ouch. So I had to learn the language. Like I had to learn the structure and all that. Cause like I said, learning from my family was not a good thing. And they used to mix English with Spanish sometimes just arbitrarily. Like, yo, what are y'all talking
Oh yeah, it's I mean Spanglish. Like, that's a not just the Adam Sandler movie.
about? Real talk. Actually, it's common in a lot of languages. I didn't realize that. But like in Brazil, they got something called Portuñol, which is like Portuguese and Spanish mixed together. Portuguese, Portugués, Español, Portuñol. And that's funny because I have a number of students I work with from Brazil, and some of them are very common with Spanish because they know people who speak, like that. They use Portuñol and stuff like that.
I like it. So, because we're using this limited uh, Zoom format, we're about to lose recording. But what I kind of want to do is, I want to go grab some tea to get rid of this little tickle in my throat, and then what I want to do is come back, and I think I want to do a reaction, right? Video, maybe take a look at that. So, for folks who don't know out there, this is the beginning or the relaunch of this format. So we're still playing around with some different things for y'all, right? We know ultimately our ultimate goal, I think, is just to let you guys in on a conversation or set of conversations that we've been having our whole lives, pretty much. Um, both of us bring different experiences, some common ground, some commonalities, um, but also some very different experiences and very different perspectives. That we've both been educators at different levels, different subject areas, um, both creative content generators. Like Trev is a musician and an actor, voice talent, among other things. And then I've been
That's right.
bam in your face. In your face, people.
And Mr. Mark Clark also has quite a bit of a background in the world of entertainment, as it were. So we're kind of edutainers by nature. Actually, the name of my publishing company is Son of an Edutainer, because my father was kind of the first version of that I ever saw. You know, my pops helped found the Harlem Renaissance Theater Group back in the day. You know, he sung, but then he was also a principal and a teacher. So it was like this guy really values education, but he also recognizes the value in entertainment. You know, Mark, having, let's see here, you got your master's in, is it film and communications or?
It's a mass comm with an emphasis
Okay,
actually,
communications
yeah, in media
specific.
production, video production, and
Right. And then I think we both have either your undergraduate minor is my undergraduate major or something like that.
yeah, my undergraduate major is English, and the minor was philosophy.
Right. My undergraduate major was philosophy and my minor was Spanish.
See, so,
Yeah.
okay, so before we get cut off, so we can kind of do this cleanly, let's take a break here. I'm gonna grab some tea, grab yourself something to drink, and then we'll jump back on. I'm gonna send you the link, and then we'll do a reaction and start the conversation, right? So, all right, people, and this is probably where we would be inserting sponsorships and advertisements. So
Yeah,
this
so
could
all
be your
those
space.
influencers, them influencer people that or people that sent me emails about me being an influencer, hit me up. I got watches y'all be sending me and stuff. Come on, man. Get up,
Yeah,
get with
yeah, hit your boy.
it.
All right, we're out. Yeah, so yeah, a little video for us to take a look at. There's a couple of concepts at play here. I'm not sure what levels of familiarity you got. So the concept of the red pill in like the YouTube space, like the red pill from the Matrix, but how they use it. How familiar are you with it?
In the YouTube space, I'm unfamiliar. I mean, I remember The Matrix.
Right. So from that usage is kind of adapted to like a general usage and then a very specific usage. So the most specific usage of it is in the dating space, and it's connected to this concept they call the manosphere or the manosphere, the alpha male kind of movement. So basically, red pill, blue pill. Blue pill is all the kind of classical notions of just be yourself, just be honest, just be open to love, and you'll find somebody, the right person for you is out there, blah blah blah. That's blue pill, right?
Okay.
Red pill is like, nah, you got to understand how this works. It's predicated on psychology, biology, and economic realities. It's like women really only going after like the top 20% of men. All these women are chasing after the same type of man. It's like, um, you need to try to make yourself as valuable as possible because that's part of the game for women is that they're hypergamous, right? Hypergamous. They date up. Women want to date a man who has like resources and experience and money. Whereas generally speaking, men just want to date a pretty girl who will sleep with them.
Okay. And I guess, yeah, in the heterosexual world, this should be interesting.
Well, I don't know anything about any other world, so I mean,
No, I feel you. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
when you said that, like you have some other insights. I don't have any other insights.
Nah, I just have friends, you know what I'm saying? So I'd also be curious to hear their perspective.
Yeah, well, that's they can have their own show. This is the heterosexual perspective because I'm heterosexual and my perspective is heterosexual, unrepentantly heterosexual. Other people can do whatever the fuck they want to do. I don't really care what they do with their dicks, pussies, and other various tidbits. But I like pussy, so that's what I'm going to talk about.
But
And so
obviously more than just that with respect to what it is.
no, I mean I pretty much I like titties. No,
No,
wait.
I can't. No, I'm talking about with whatever this video is you got. I don't even know what we're about to get into. I'm
Oh, I
like,
don't even know either. I was just going into red pill, blue pill. So and then red pill is basically, yeah, understand reality, and then black pill, which is kind of a little bit to the tangent, but Black Pill is basically like, just be tall, handsome, and rich.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, and then the second concept is, so this is not dealing with that though. This video is not dealing with the dating specific concept. I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I know we're going to come back to it. It's a really big conversation just in the space, and a bunch of people that I'm tracking are sort of involved in the conversation. So at some point, we'll come back more specifically to dating and like the relationship culture side of it. But this is more on politics and race relations. So in a more general sense, it's still the same concept. Blue pill is what they taught you in school, and like the commonly accepted mainstream historical sort of narratives, and then red pill is ostensibly reality based observations. All right. So and then the other side of this is, Professor Sowell, Thomas Sowell?
Thought you was gonna say Professor Xavier. No, I do know Professor Soul.
So so he is a conservative economist. Not sure where he's headquartered now. I think he's with the Heritage Foundation. But he is a Black conservative, rooted in economic theory. But his roots in economic theory kind of give him sort of insights that go against the common grain in a lot of ways when it comes to the Black situation in America, Black culture, and sort of just a number of points. So this video is actually, so we're gonna do a meta reaction. We're doing a reaction to a video, which is a mom and son watching Thomas Sowell. So this is the son introducing the mom to the red pill, vis-a this video with Professor Sowell. So I want us to take a look at it and then stop me at any point during, if you need me to pause it to, for you to make a point or clarify, but otherwise I'll kind of run it and then we can jump on it. All right.
All right.
So yeah, I told her today that I wanted to put her on a red pill. We grew up with this, of course. The school taught us what slavery is and things of that nature, but I came across this information and I definitely wanted to share it with my mom. Y'all know Thomas Sowell has been very prominent on the channel. You familiar with Thomas Sowell at all? Yeah. Okay, well he's a pretty dope guy. He's just gonna relay some information to you, and I want you to just be as honest and pure about your reactions, whether you agree, disagree, whatever. I just wanted to make sure I exposed you to what I've been exposed to. So let's do what we do.
These people are creating a terrible problem in our cities. They can't or won't hold a job, they flout the law constantly and neglect their children, they drink too much, and their moral standards would shame an alley cat. For some reason or other, they absolutely refuse to accommodate themselves to any kind of decent, civilized life.
Before we continue, who do you think he's describing?
I gotta hear it.
You want to hear it again? I really, because it's surprising.
These people are creating a terrible problem in our cities. They can't or won't hold a job, they flout the law constantly and neglect their children, they drink too much, and their moral standards would shame an alley cat. For some reason or other, they absolutely refuse to accommodate themselves to any kind of decent, civilized life.
You can be honest. What group of people do you think he was talking about?
Lazy.
Yeah, but like what color group? Which does this describe? White people, black people?
I think they describing our color.
You think this is describing black people?
Yes.
You'll be.
Go beyond your reality. With
Sorry for the commercial
the ultimate VFX and composite.
Be surprised.
This was said in 1956 in Indianapolis, not about blacks or other minorities, but about poor whites from the South.
I was actually
crazy,
thinking,
right?
Yeah.
that's what popped in my head when I was listening, but I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna say that. That sounds a little offensive.
Wait, what popped in your head?
Redneck.
Okay, keep that in mind.
Then I was like, yeah, it's kind of offensive.
No.
But that's what I thought when I was listening.
Is redneck an offensive? Is redneck an offensive term?
All the years I lived in the South, part of me felt like it kind of was, but yeah, whatever.
I mean, I'm not. It's like a lawsuit. I'm not in a position to bring suit. Like, no one has ever called me a redneck, so I'm not sure. I guess it's depending on context because I'm pretty sure there are dudes who call themselves rednecks proudly.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of them, but it's kind of like just like a brother might use the N word proudly. I don't think they're gonna view someone outside of their group using that term and being okay with it.
All right, so
I'm not entirely sure, but whatever it is, that's what I thought. I believe Chappelle would call them the poor whites, which is what I thought.
Basket of deplorables in the Hillary Clinton language. All right, so here we go.
Crazy, right? Because
Wow.
as he was saying it, I'm sitting there like, oh wow, yeah, yeah, she's definitely talking about black people.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Nor was Indianapolis unique in this respect. A 1951 survey in Detroit found that white Southerners living there were considered undesirable by 21% of those surveyed, compared to 13% who ranked blacks the same way. In the late 1940s, a Chicago employer said frankly, "I told the guard at the plant gate to tell the hillbillies that there were no openings." When poor whites from the South moved into northern cities to work in war plants during the Second World War, occasionally a white Southerner would find that a flat or a furnished room had just been rented when the landlord heard his Southern accent. More is involved here than a mere parallel between blacks and Southern whites. What is involved is a common subculture that goes back for centuries.
So pretty much he was already judging him based off, his accent in terms of whether he wanted to, give him a chance or not.
Right. What is involved is a common subculture that goes back for centuries, which has encompassed everything from ways of talking to attitudes toward education, violence, and sex, and which originated not in the South, but in those parts of the British Isles from which white Southerners came. That culture long ago died out where it originated in Britain, while surviving in the American South. Then it largely died out among both white and black Southerners, while still surviving today in the poorest and worst of the urban black ghettos.
Mm-hmm. But you're seeing
reaction to not to their reaction, I guess, but to what the premise of the argument. So I think what the argument is basically saying that there's a particular culture which in America we've kind of come to ascribe to hood, African American hood culture, right? Thug culture, this ratchet, all of these terms.
Right.
And the common thought now is that it originated with the culture that currently expresses it, right? Which is Black American culture, or at least a specific subset of Black American culture. But this premise is that that's not necessarily the case, and that this behavior, this pattern of behavior, actually originates in Europe, and it's a learned set of behaviors that got communicated via the contact between poor whites and slaves in colonial America. So I mean, I'm going to keep going, but I think that's the premise.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so what do you think of that?
Oh, I'm intrigued without question. Like, especially because when I was initially listening, the first initial thought was someone's going to think they talking about black folks. But my thought was that actually sound like rednecks. But like I said, I didn't want to say it like that. And then I was like, then I thought, like I said, the Dave Chappelle, the poor whites. And then obviously he leads into where they use the term hillbilly and, the Southern whites, as it were. So, right, that's what I thought. And to me, there's a definitive correlation in the economic transference of how we kind of get to what he's referencing at this stopping point. So okay. Let's keep it going.
Where the root of you heard when he opened it up how he was describing the poor white people.
Exactly.
And he described how it integrated into the South. He told you where it came from, but he told you now where you see it still.
The first time you made a sale online was also the first time you heard of a town named
Dinosaur. We just got an order from Dinosaur.
The mindset is still sticking to, which is us. You know what I'm saying?
still surviving today in the poorest and worst of the urban black ghettos. It is not uncommon for a culture to survive longer where it is transplanted and to retain characteristics lost in its place of origin. The French spoken in Quebec and the Spanish spoken in Mexico contain words and phrases that have long since become archaic in France and Spain. Regional German dialects persisted among Germans living in the United States after those dialects had begun to die out in Germany itself. A scholar specializing in the history of the South has likewise noted among white Southerners archaic word forms, while another scholar has pointed out the continued use in that region of terms that were familiar at the time of the first Queen Elizabeth.
I know it's all a lot hitting you at once, but I promise you, the more and more you hear it, the more and more it's going to make sense.
Okay.
Because like he's giving you a lot of history at once, and it's kind of hard to... I know me, like if I read a paragraph and you ask me what I read, I look at you and be like,
right.
I don't know. So I know the first time you're hearing all this, it's kind of like boom, boom, boom. That's why I'm trying to, at any instance I can, I try to just, let you know what's going on.
Use in that region of terms that were familiar at the time of the first.
I really like the interaction between the mom and the son. I'm just going to point that out. I really like the respectful way that he is. He knows he's putting his mom on. He knows his mom doesn't have this information, but he's not trying to fucking lord it over her. Like he's respectfully, helping her get it. I like that.
No doubt.
First Queen Elizabeth. The card game whist is today played almost exclusively by blacks, especially low-income blacks, though in the 18...
That's bid
whist?
That's bid whist, my boy.
They talking about bid whist?
Yeah, my boy.
That's right.
What? Yo, okay, I'm bugging on that. So big shout out to England, because I rocks with some whist. But
and just for again, just to put context, even though we're both New Yorkers by breeding and birth, our grandparents, my maternal grandparents are Southerners. One from North Carolina, one from South Carolina, and they, brought with them to the North a lot of Southern sensibilities.
yes, we both know what grits are. Yes.
Yeah, correct, 100%.
I heard a lot of that when I first moved down to the South. You ain't never had grits before? Like, yeah, man, that's not even funny, bro. What, man? You Yankees don't be eating grits. Or if you do, you put that daggone sugar in it.
Right.
Man, nah, man. My grandparents from down here, bro.
So the only reason I pointed it out is because my mom and her sisters and their friends played bid whist, and then my grandfather played dominoes and pinochle. Those are like very common games for those people.
Oh yeah, I learned how to play whist from my pops, who learned how to play from pop.
Yeah, well, we play spades too, but whist is another book taking type game like spades or hearts. But anyway, let's get back.
18th century, it was played by the British upper classes and has since then evolved into bridge. The history of the evolution of this game is indicative of a much broader pattern of cultural evolution in much more weighty things. Southern whites not only spoke the English language in very different ways from whites in other regions, their churches, their roads, their homes, their music, their education, their food, and their sex lives were all sharply different from those of other whites.
In other words, they was eating humbly. You remember when we used to eat humbly? We always had food, don't get it twisted. But we had to deal with what we had, what was on the table, what we was able to afford.
Exactly.
So they preferences for like higher standard foods or music that was super sophisticated, it didn't matter. They had their own culture. Mm-hmm. And if you think about like blacks, we got Ebonics, we got like hip hop music, we got our own, we eat food differently, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, there's that. He's just pointing that out.
Their food and their sex lives were all sharply different from those of other whites. The history of this redneck or cracker culture is more than a curiosity. It has contemporary...
I see you laughing.
It's so matter of fact and academic. In this redneck and cracker culture, I'm like, word.
I'm saying, like, what do you want? The C word? Like, come on, bro.
Yo,
they'll be
I
fine.
appreciate it. Come on. How many people even know about the history of the word cracker?
Let that whip crack on your
Yeah,
black ass.
black folks. That's where it came from. A lot of people don't know that too. I just remember a number of times in the classrooms just dropping stuff. You're like, for real? I'd be like, yeah, the whip used to make a crack sound. That's what slaves would, that's how they would communicate. Oh shit, here come that cracker. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Also, I mean, there's also the fact that a lot of untanned Europeans are sort of the color saltine.
Saltinish, yeah, I feel you on that too.
That's neither here nor there.
That's a noticeable or a notable parallel or
All right, so let's go.
correlation. There we go. All right.
Very significant because of its influence on the economic and social evolution of vast numbers of people, millions of blacks and whites, and its continuing influence on the lives and deaths of a residual population in America's black ghettos, which has still not completely escaped from that culture. From early in American history, foreign visitors and domestic travelers alike were struck by cultural contrasts between the white population of the South and that of the rest of the country in general.
Real quick, when you grew up, I know you say you tell me all the time that we the same in the sense that we the black sheep of the family. Do you think that it's because you wanted to better yourself, that maybe your environment, people would look down on you because you too good for us now. You think you too good because you want to do this better or anything of that nature? Have you ever tried to better yourself and the people around you just didn't want that to happen? So they would call you like, a college girl. Not saying that you went to college, but I mean just rather like a college girl, or you think you smart or nerd, stuff like that.
It's just that the things that I see that was growing up, in society, I just wanted to be different.
Yeah.
I didn't want, you all to grow up in certain areas, certain different things that I.
So these nuggets are made from chicken, but they're made to.
Saw people were doing, and
yeah,
I didn't want you all to get caught up in that lifestyle, so I chose to be different. I chose to do things differently. Now, you have people that will talk. They would say this, and but I had to choose what I had to choose for you all, what was best for you all. So this is what I decided. So
I think that's dope. No, I think that's dope.
Right, because a lot of times, like you said, I was able to do it.
Not that I don't appreciate it, but I'm going to fast forward a little bit to this.
In this
white population of the South.
What? The person who's talking, he's black. And I'm black every day. Anyhow, that's the only reason why I brought that up.
Okay.
Not completely escaped from that culture. From early in American history, foreign visitors and domestic travelers alike were struck by cultural contrasts between the white population of the South and that of the rest of the country in general, and of New England in particular. In the early 19th century, Alexis de Tocqueville contrasted white Southerners with white Northerners in his classic Democracy in America, and Frederick Law Olmsted did the same later in his books about his travels through the antebellum South, notably Cotton Kingdom. The cultural values and social patterns prevalent among Southern whites included an aversion to work, proneness to violence, neglect of education, sexual promiscuity, improvidence, drunkenness, lack of entrepreneurship, reckless searches for excitement, lively music and dance, and a style of religious oratory marked by strident rhetoric, unbridled emotions, and flamboyant imagery. This oratorical style carried over into the political oratory of the region in both the Jim Crow era and the Civil Rights era.
You came right after the Jim Crow era, didn't you? When was it?
So again,
that's a wild tie-in that I didn't even think about, and I was just sitting there thinking about some of what I remember living in North Carolina and hearing about certain groups of people and the kind of churches they went to, and to hear about some of the the different denominations and sub-denominations, I guess, that were a little more animated. I heard some wild stories, and it wasn't the black churches, like Pentecostal and all this stuff. I was like,
the charismatic schools and the congregations that some of the Kojics and things of that nature. And again, just for context, we were raised Catholic, even though both of us have ventured into other studies. Our family is Roman Catholic.
Yeah, which is wild on both sides for me, as it were. So
right,
I had that exposure in Spanish too.
Okay, so and again, I really appreciate the way this mother and son are interacting, and at some point, so I definitely want to give shout out to this King Blitz. I'm going to definitely subscribe. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that on the air right now. But
Kingdom Reacts.
More than anything else, I kind of wanted. I mean, he was reacting to the video, and I liked the video. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit to some of the mom son stuff. But shout out to them.
Yeah, no question.
Hold on, let me Google it. When was the Jim Crow era? It was in.
Okay, so and this is we'll do an aside because that's totally legit. Trev and I noticed that when we were watching some reactions from this another group, the Cartiers. Just some background knowledge that is a little bit more common. I mean, he and I both kind of went out of our way to study American history, and then kind of specifically African American history as a subset of that. I think it was just pushed a little bit more, and then again, both of us just for different reasons, and then also other people in our family have certain connections and educations. So anyway,
I was thinking about that as he was describing so much of the Southerners, and I was sitting there thinking about like Nana and why so many of us don't carry those. I mean, let's be real. Most of what he was saying were relatively negative depictions of a culture, and very often associated with Black people of today. But we weren't exposed to that. Ma was one of the first African American women in the country to graduate, from university.
Right.
So, and that was in the 1920s. So,
well, and that's not to say, in the sense that we were definitely exposed to it, in the sense that it was there in the city. Like, not every household was like the households that our family were maintained.
Like, yeah, like I remember my father always saying, your great grandmother went, you going. He said, I don't know if you're gonna finish, but you going. And that just became like that thing in my head. And I was always mindful of that, especially because of, the education of my, and then of course Pop. We can get into that another time. But obviously this is tied in, and then it is fascinating to watch the younger generation react to things or have those fragments of information, which I guess is better than nothing because it demonstrates an interest in actually wanting to learn. Like you referenced the Cartier family. Shout out to those young boys. I find their videos entertaining, and a lot of times it's because when they're reacting to, some hip hop artists from our era or generation, they begin dissecting the wordplay and recognizing how much they have yet to learn or how little they've been exposed to things. So yeah, I digress. We can finish.
We're gonna finish this up, and I just say that just to say we will do some videos on background information stuff, and if any of you guys out there, as this community develops, need specific information, just let us know, and we'll try to deliver it. But basically, in a nutshell, Jim Crow as a whole kind of refers to this period of segregation after the end of a lot of the end of legal slavery and the end of a lot of the legal prohibitions or formal prohibitions. A lot of is the informal code of customs that played out, and in some places still, legal customs that played out.
It was legalized segregation. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, people at times try to sugarcoat it, and it's like, no, that was part of why they referred to it as, a specific era. It was tied to which amendment was it? I guess voting, right? Or no?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not
13th
one
Amendment
thing.
was right because the 13th Amendment, that's supposed abolition of slavery. That's 1865, and then Jim Crow
is the entire period through even
right from the
through
end of that to
through civil rights, basically.
yeah, I was about to say all the way into the 1960s, really.
And that's really what the civil rights movement was. I mean, not there were multiple things, but that's one of the things the civil rights movement was attempting to abolish was the vestiges of the Jim Crow system, like primarily in the South, but not totally. Like that system did extend throughout the rest of the country to a certain degree. But anyway, I just wanted to give the background information, and that we just got the notification that our meeting is going to end in 10. So we're going to go ahead and play this. So it's interesting, as he said, that the young brother didn't have necessarily information top of mind.
Yeah, it was like he had that. He knew kind of what it was, but didn't have that scope of the actual time frame. He's like, Mom, you came after Jim Crow, right? So it's
Right.
like, okay, yeah, he's trying,
And just for reference, our grandparents, again, on my mom's side, would have lived a good portion of their life directly in the middle of the Jim Crow South, and then
oh yeah,
in its remnants
and then we're part of the Great Migration, and we're part of so many other freaking incredible things.
And that's another term that we'll have to do some content to kind of construct some context from. But let's let these people finish up so we can get out of here.
1950.
Pride, vanity, politicians, pre-era, political oratory of the region in both the Jim Crow era and the Civil Rights era, and has continued on into our own times among Black politicians, preachers, and activists. Touchy pride, vanity, and boastful self-dramatization were also part of this redneck culture among people from regions of Britain where the civilization was the least developed. They boast and lack self-restraint, Olmsted said, after observing their descendants in the American antebellum South. While Professor Grady McWhiney's cracker culture is perhaps the most thorough historical study of the values and behavioral patterns of white Southerners, many other scholarly studies.
Okay.
I know. Go ahead. I know. Get it out. Go ahead. I know you gotta get it out.
Yo, Money's name was Grady McWhiney. Oh. Yeah, that caught me off guard, son. Oh, wow. Run that back. And it was prefaced with like adjectives that just flowed. It's like, wait, what? It was like
Okay. Let's let it go.
Patterns prevalent and that of the rest of the country in general, and of New England in particular. In the early 19th century, Alexis de Tocqueville contrasted white Southerners with white Northerners in his classic Democracy in America, and Frederick Law Olmsted did the same later in his books about his travels through the antebellum South, notably Cotton Kingdom. The cultural values and social patterns prevalent among Southern whites included an aversion to work, proneness to violence, neglect of education, sexual promiscuity, reckless oratory in both the Jim boastful self-dramatization were also part of this redneck culture among people from regions of Britain where the civilization was the least developed. They boast and lack self-restraint, Olmsted said, after observing their descendants in the American antebellum South. While Professor Grady McWhiney's cracker culture is perhaps the most thorough historical study of the values and behavioral patterns of white Southerners, many other scholarly studies have turned up very similar patterns, even when they differed in some ways as to the causes. Professor David Hackett Fisher's Albion Seed, for example, challenges the Celtic connection thesis put forth by Professor McWhiney, but shows.
Are you interested in starting your own faceless YouTube automation channel, but all people do is tell you to go to Fiverr?
Shows many of the same cultural patterns among the same people, both in Britain and in the American South. Popular writings of the 19th and 20th centuries have likewise described similar behavior, including the Indianapolis residents' comments on white Southern migrants to that city, which sound so much like what many have said about ghetto blacks.
Yep.
Wow.
None of this is meant to claim that these patterns have remained rigidly unchanged over the centuries, or that there are literally no differences between whites and blacks in any aspects of this
Yeah, he's not
subculture.
saying that.
However, what is remarkable is how pervasive and how close the similarities have been.
Yep.
So that's that. And I don't necessarily, well, I do kind of want to see if I can find this other thing where it's the professor directly. He has a lot of,
excuse me.
Yeah, content. I don't want.
You got Rick Ross on the cover there. That's interesting.
Okay, so this is Thomas Sowell. Can you still see?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Next and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. Over 30 books published. How important is this book to you?
Probably, it may be the most important because there are so many misconceptions about racial and ethnic.
I think I said heritage earlier. There you go. So the Hoover Institution, which is like a conservative think tank.
Issues that just straightening out the misconceptions is a major task in itself. I don't reach any kind of policy conclusions in this book because, as I say, it's just it's a full-time job to get the facts straightened out. So I can write a column in a newspaper aimed at the general public, and there'll be extremely few misunderstandings of what I said. I can say the same things in a book that's aimed at intellectuals, and there'll be incredible twists and turning. Well, you seem to say this further than that. I remember one huge review trying to figure out the implications of ethnic America. And what made it a farce was that the last chapter of the book is titled Implications. So you don't have to guess what the implications I drew. They're right there. But I strongly suspect the person who wrote the review never got that far.
Black rednecks, who are they?
These would be blacks who came out of the Southern culture and who carried that culture with them north into the urban ghettos and into the ghettos.
And it's important, Trev brought up the Great Migration, and we'll get into that later, but that's an important concept in terms of the dissemination or the distribution of this cultural meme, right?
The South, for that matter. And who have not moved out of that culture since. Over the years, both blacks and whites have moved away from that culture. But in the poorest and worst of the ghetto areas, there are lots of people who have not. And these kinds of, it's a culture which didn't do whites any good, and it's certainly not doing blacks any good today. And the tragedy is that people regard this culture as somehow the authentic black culture, and therefore you're not to interfere with it. It's to be allowed to, and so they're cheering people on. It reminds me of a scene in the Blue Max where this general is encouraging this daredevil pilot to do all kinds of wild stunts, you see, knowing that the guy's going to kill himself if he keeps doing this, and therefore the general will be rid of a political problem. Now, I don't think that the white liberals are doing this deliberately, but I think the net results are the same. They are cheering blacks on and doing things that are absolutely self-destructive.
What's the difference between a black redneck and a white redneck?
Color.
Same kind of people, same attitudes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and same kind of results. One of the things I point out in this book is that, as late as the First World War, when mental tests were given in the Army, there were whites from any number of southern states who scored lower on those tests than blacks from northern states. So that anyone who comes out of that culture is likely to score lower on mental tests, to do less well in intellectual areas, whether they're black or white. Among the middleman minorities, of which the Jews are the most prominent, the hostility to these people in countries around the world is out of all proportion to that, to any other kind of group I can think of. In terms of violence, the number of Chinese killed, let's say, in 1 year, and by mob action, exceeds all the blacks lynched in the entire history of the United States. And the number of Armenians killed in Turkey, during the First World War, is greater than that. And of course, the number of Jews slaughtered on a number of occasions in history, even before the Holocaust, is greater than that. So that the question is, why this particular kind of people are the targets of so much venomous hatred. And I think the answer is that they not only succeed, they succeed in a way which is a threat to the egos of other people. That is, no, you can envy a Rockefeller, but he's no threat to your ego because you say, listen, anybody can be rich if he's born a Rockefeller. But the guy who comes here, let's say from Vietnam or Korea, and arrives here with little more than the clothes on his back and a few words of broken English, and a decade later he has his own little business, and you see his son a few years after that getting ready to go off to Harvard or MIT, you got to ask yourself, you either got to, you know, you've got to hate yourself for saying, "My."
Hey, we're about to get cut
About
off.
to shut off.
Yeah, let's do one more. I'm going to stop share and jump back in because I think I do want to react to this, right? So let's jump back in.